Hey everyone, welcome back to Keto and Crime. I am back. Today is Tuesday, April 30th. I am back going over what happened yesterday, Monday, April 29th in the Chad Daybell case. My name is Tracy. Welcome. If you're new here, thank you. I hope I earn your subscription. I also do holiday trees. We're currently on Cinco de Mayo, and I really appreciate everyone. I do true crime, dark history, horror movie reviews, and when a case that I have followed for a long time, like this one, and I have so many videos about this case. There's four separate playlists. There's one on the actual case. There's one on my coverage of both trials, and then there are a couple of playlists actually where I have summarized and reviewed Chad Daybell's books. So you'll find a whole wealth of information on this case on this channel. So with that being said, I'm going to dive into what happened yesterday. If you're watching this when this first came out, coming to you on Tuesday, April 30th, this is what happened on Monday, April 29th. Part of the day was not available via live stream. They will only allow audio of some of the FBI testimony that occurred this day, but I'm going to do my best to give you the summary in as most compact way that I can. Let's get started. The first witness called is FBI Special Agent Nick Balance. As I said before, there was only audio available. So they basically turned the cameras off or turned the cameras away from the witness. He has been a special agent since June 2016, normally with the Washington, D.C. headquarters and bureau, but he also worked as a U.S. Deputy Marshal for 9 years and is currently a member of the Cellular Analyst Survey Team. So he is on a group of about 80 special agents who specialize in using cell phone records to determine the general location of a person of interest in an investigation. Rob Wood will be questioning Balance. He talks about the training involved to be a member of his particular unit. He explains all of that in addition to having a college degree in something related, going to the FBI Academy, and then all the additional training they do. And then he asks him to explain basically what a cell phone tower does. He says that it is constantly emitting radio frequency in a given area that it serves, and basically the higher the population, the more towers in an area, and that any cell phones that are in use within that area will ping off a certain tower if it's within network. He said a cell phone is constantly scanning environments looking for the strongest tower and sector to get the signal out quicker. So he says the phone makes the decision of which tower and sector to connect to, but it will go with the strongest signal. And he said that is how cell companies are able to keep records on their users' phone activities. Even though you might be in this area, if this tower is weak, it might go over here, but there's a radius. And he says that lots of times signals do overlap, so their department is tasked with kind of feeding through all of that and determining where approximately a person might be. He says that in populated areas like Boise, Idaho, there's overlapping coverage everywhere, but in some rural areas where there's only one or two towers, it's a little bit easier to determine. So he said that he was contacted in June of 2020 after they found the bodies of JJ and Tylee on the Daybell property, and he gathered up his equipment, came to Rexburg, and he started doing some test measures to towers around Rexburg and St. Anthony, Idaho, to get kind of a baseline. And then he said that he started using a piece of equipment known as a GAR, a Gladiator Autonomous Receiver, to kind of test towers, break down, and then get into the actual cell phone numbers and things that he was provided. He said they also work off the Google network, and he said that they're tracked using both satellite Wi-Fi and cellular data themselves. He says you cannot pinpoint the exact location of a phone within the network, but you can find the general within just a couple of dozen miles. So he says that in this case, once he was given the phone numbers he would be investigating, he went to work. Then there is a sidebar that Pryor asked for, and that takes about 10 to 15 minutes. And then they show a slideshow of the network, all the pings, and a map of the Daybell property in relation to Rexburg and St. Anthony. They show where Tylee and JJ's bodies were located to kind of give everybody an idea of what they're going to be looking at. And then they show a Google location history for Homer Jaximus at Gmail, which is Alex Cox's account, and shows where he pinged on the last day that Tylee was photographed alive. Now, as we know, Alex Cox's cell phone data has been quite incriminating. It shows that his device was last at Lori's apartment at 2:42 a.m. on September 9th, and at 4:37 it was in his apartment. And then it shows activity. Then they switch to another slide, which shows Chad Daybell's phone between 7:20 a.m. and 8:04 a.m. on September 9th. And there were multiple text messages with Lori, and then a call at 8:03. So what they're doing is looking at locations of the cell phone and then actual calls and texts as they relate to those locations to put together kind of a picture of what we're looking at. Valance said that Lori and Chad responded pretty regularly, and also Chad and Alex did between texts and phone calls. He said that they were pretty inept at using phone calls when they didn't want texts to be tracked or be able to be read. And then it shows, the next slide shows the location history of Alex's device between 8:49 and 9:15. He's in the area of his apartment, and then by 9:15, he is just south of Chad's house. Now, this is the day they suspect the children were buried. We see another slide on Alex's device showing property, him on Chad's property between 9:21 and 10:57 a.m. So between 9:20 and 11 a.m., he was on Chad's actual property. And then after morning break, we come back and it shows, the next slide shows Chad's phone was used between 10:30 and 12:20 on September 9th. And there were multiple text messages and one call with Lori Vallow, and that the activity was during the same time frame that Alex was on the property. So this is what Chad was doing while Alex was doing whatever he was doing. And then it shows that Alex Cox was on Chad's property again at 11:42, and then the device was traveling southbound away from the property between 11:46 and 11:47. At 11:45, Chad's device calls Lori, and then an outgoing call was made from Alex to Lori at the same time. So they're all communicating with Lori. The next slide shows that Chad's device received a text from Lori's device between 12:30 and 12:34, and that he replied about 12:40. And then the next few slides are kind of showing, which phones belong to Lori versus Chad versus Alex. And then the exhibit moves on to the day of September 23rd. This is the last day that JJ was seen alive. And the slide shows multiple outbound texts and one inbound message between Chad and Lori between 3:59 a.m. and 8:35, and that Chad sent Lori a text at 3:59 to start off that. And then at 9:25, Chad's device called Alex's device for 38 seconds. And then later on that same day, between 9:27 and 9:57, 3 cell phone towers show that Alex's device was heading toward the Daybell property. And then they show how he traveled between his apartment and the Daybell property between 9:55 to 10:12 a.m., and that the device was pinging roughly within a margin of error around the area near the pond where JJ's body was found. And then it shows more text between all of them on that day, including, text between Tammy and Chad as well. And then he is questioned, Wood pretty much tenders the witness, and Pryor begins his cross-examination. Pryor asks Valance if the significance of including October 9th in his report. He says that's the day Tammy Daybell resorted an assault, because that also showed that Alex was near the Daybell property on the day that somebody attempted to shoot her. And then they show all of that data on screen. And then there is another sidebar. I wish the judge would do something about all these sidebars. And then Pryor asked Balance to explain the difference between a tower and a cell site. Balance says that the cell site includes the tower and sector. The tower is just the tower itself. Pryor then asked Balance when he did the drive test. He said he did it the week of June 16th, and it was over multiple days. He says they're done to show where a phone could be, not exactly where it is. Pryor then asked some very specific questions about Gladiator Forensic. He said that they're a very trusted company used by the FBI and that they're pretty well on the nose, not a whole lot of error. He says Pryor basically wants to specify this is not something that is able to be purchased by the public at large. He said, true, only military or governmental agencies or law enforcement. And then Pryor brings up a slide showing Chad's property, and he focuses in on the pond and on the fire pit. He asks Balance to point out the fire pit, which Balance does. And then he shows another Homer J. Maximus account showing that it shows that he wasn't in the area. And then Pryor asked why Balance didn't put any cell phone data with Melanie Gibb and David Warwick. He said he was not asked to examine their cell phone records. And then Pryor asks him who provided him the cell phone data. He said various law enforcement agencies, from Fremont County to the FBI to Rexburg Police. And then he begins asking Balance about the significance of these cell phone pings, and he says it's very useful in locating where a person might be, or at least in the vicinity, with like a 90% accuracy. And he asked Balance if he did his own tests or were these all governmental. He said, no, I only did the tests that I was ordered to do. And he said, but a civilian could subpoena all his raw data and do his own tests. And then they look at a list of cell phone towers of various providers provided that were in the area between September 2019 and June 2020. He notes that there was no major changes between those times. And so basically, Pryor has no further questions. Wood does redirect, again, going back to the list of different providers and their cell phone towers and cell phone sites. He said, can you confirm there was no significant changes in the towers between that time period? And Balance says yes, according to his testing. There was no new towers, no bad towers taken away, all of that good stuff that might impede the data. Wood then asks him about geolocation, if it can be altered on a cell phone device. He says a user can make changes to what is stored on the device, and they can opt out of certain services, but there's still going to be a trail there. Then Rob Wood tenders the witness. Pryor wants to do another recross examination, and Boyce says no, that nothing Wood asks on his redirect was out of norms for the questioning, and if he wants to ask the agent for the questions, he can recall him as a defense witness, and he is just dismissed. And then another short sidebar and lunch, and they come back about really close to 1 o'clock. And prosecution is calling Hannah Parker. She is a freelance photographer. She is a second cousin of Tammy. Her mom is Tammy's mom's cousin. And Hannah was with her mom on October 19th when she heard Tammy passed away. She said that they were all very saddened and confused. They live in Springville, Utah, by the way. Hannah attended Tammy's funeral and viewing. She said that she went through the viewing line twice and gave her condolences to everybody in the immediate family. She had a brief conversation with her dad. She had a brief conversation with Chad. Chad says that Tammy had been sick that day and had been vomiting and coughing. Around 10 p.m., she started throwing up. She said that she went to bed. He said he stayed up late working in his office. He said at 1 a.m., he went upstairs and found Tammy on the floor where she had rolled out of bed. He said she was already cold and stiff, and that he called Garth in, and we know what happened after that. Hannah says that Chad appeared calmer than she would have expected. He would only get emotional when Hannah's dad got emotional, and then he would immediately stop crying. He said She said it just stood out to him that somebody that just lost their life partner of 30 years would be a little more emotional. She said that she went through the funeral line with her mom a little bit later. She says Chad told them what happened, almost the exact same story, and said that, but he said the second time he told the story, Tammy went to bed around 9 p.m., where he told her dad she went to bed at 10 p.m., and that he stayed up working until around 10 p.m., where he previously told his dad it was after 11 a.m., and that he found Tammy on the floor. And then in this one, he said that he went to bed and then woke up to Tammy having rolled out of bed. So in the first story that he told Hannah's dad, he went up around 11 p.m. and found her already out of the bed. In this story, he went up around 11 p.m. and went to bed. She was in the bed, and then he woke her up by rolling out of bed. Now, remember, he's also told law enforcement he was woken up by her rolling out of bed. So two very different stories there about what happened the night Tammy died. Then Hannah says that she did not ask Chad any questions, but she felt really, really uncomfortable, and later spoke about the inconsistencies with her mother and with Samantha Gwillem, which was Tammy's sister. And then the prosecution tenders the witness, and Pryor begins the cross-examination. He asked Hannah if she ever gave a report to law enforcement. She said she did in August of 2020. She actually met with investigators twice. He asked her if she is aware that the home is a one-story. Hannah says she had never been to the home. And pretty much that's where Pryor ends his cross-examination, a very weird cross-examination. Wixom does redirect one time for the prosecution. He asked her if she or her dad ever asked Chad any questions about the layout of her home, and Hannah says no. So she said there was no doubt in her mind at the time Chad told her the story about going upstairs and downstairs. Another completely inaccurate statement. Next, the prosecution calls Patricia later, who is another cousin of Tammy's. Wixom is doing the examination, asked her if she had a strong relationship when they were younger. Patricia breaks down and says yes, they were 7 months apart and grew up as sisters. She said that she would spend weeks during the summer with Tammy, and they wrote letters back and forth. She said they were very close friends, and all during high school and during college and everything else. They're both teachers, so they both had that in common, and they said she still keeps a lot of the letters that her and Tammy wrote back and forth. Then they asked about when she found out the Daybells moved to Idaho. She says that they spoke every few weeks, and then it went down to about once a month they were speaking. Then he asked her about the day Tammy died on October 19th, 2019. Patricia says her mom called her, was crying hysterically, and told her that Tammy had passed. She said it didn't really register with her because she was young and healthy, and she said it just didn't make sense to me. And she said it was just, she knew how active she was because they did communicate once or twice a month. And she said that she went to the viewing alone when she walked in. She and another cousin went through the viewing line. She says that she noticed Chad talking with people, and if someone would cry, he would cry, but he wasn't crying on his own, but he was mostly just visiting with people. She said she felt he should have been a little more emotional. Patricia and her daughter Hannah then went up to talk with Chad. She said that Patricia said she was very sorry for his loss. They hugged, and then basically he just said that she was sick that day. She felt better after she threw up and she went to bed, and then not much more. And then she said that Tammy loved you so much, blah, 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 blah. Chad told Patricia that Tammy went to bed around 10. He stayed up working. He went to bed later, and he woke up the next morning to the sound of Tammy rolling and falling off the bed, half on, half off. And as you said, he's told the story now to 3 different people, family members, and 2 times the story kind of lines up. The other time it was completely different. One time he found her when he went to bed. The other 2 times she rolled off and woke him up. Patricia just says that she went to the funeral the next day, and again, something wasn't right. And then she overheard him telling a few different people that Tammy wasn't easy to live with. She was lazy. She had depression. And it was just hard. So she said that angered her a whole lot for him to say that sort of thing. And then Patricia says that after Emma told a story about Tammy wanting more pets, Patricia looked at Chad and he looked to be a little concerned and then laughed. And then Tammy told a story about Tammy playing video games and it said she would be the lookout for when Chad got home because he didn't like them playing video games. Just a whole lot of conflicting stories from Chad and the Daybell children. And then the state tenders the witness, and Pryor does a quick cross-examination. He asked her if she ever recalls any discussion at the viewing about Tammy or Chad going upstairs or downstairs. She said she doesn't recall. It was more about they went to bed, not upstairs or downstairs. And she is released, though they may recall her later. And then pretty much testimony is over for the day. They do point out that there will be no court today, Tuesday, April 30th. So I'll be back with you on Thursday to go over the testimony that occurs on Wednesday, May 1st. So I'll be back with you then. And until next time, keto and crime.